Good morning.
Good morning, Sandy. And good morning, everybody. We are at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Winthrop. We're having our daily meditation on Thursday with Lorrie.
Hi, this is Lorrie. I'm reading an excerpt from Bread and Wine, and it's called The End is Life. It's by Fred Buechner. Next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember how that impostor said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' Therefore, order the scepter to be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people, 'He has risen from the dead.' And the last fraud will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go, make it as secure as you can." So they went and made the scepter secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. Matthew 27. Of all the great painters in the world, the one that I would choose to paint this scene is Rembrandt. I would want it done in chiaroscuro in terms of light and shade, with this chamber where Pilate receives the delegation almost entirely in shadow, and with the light coming mainly from the faces themselves, especially the bearded faces of the Jewish elders, the creased faces of these pious old men, as they lean a little too intensely forward to hear the Romans answer, "What will he say?" Then the helpless old man look when they are not quite sure what they have heard correctly, as Pilate tells them in effect to do whatever they want to do. They have their own temple guard, after all. Make it as secure as you can, he tells them. This is precisely the moment for Rembrandt to paint. The vulnerable old men turning toward each other now, their faded old eyes wide with bewilderment, their mouths hanging loose, the kind of dazed, tremendous fear of old men suddenly called upon to do a young man's job. You are not sure whether to laugh or cry. As secure as you can, the proctor of Judea tells them. But how secure is that? Their lips move, but no sound comes. God knows they have a good reason to be afraid. God knows. I think that we can say they have 2 reasons for being afraid. Although they have mentioned only one to Pilate, namely that the dead man's disciples may, in the words of Matthew, go and steal him away and tell the people. So their spoken fear is the fear of a religious hoax. Beneath the fear they spoke about to Pilate lay another fear that they had not spoken about to anyone, probably not in even each other. This was a fear which I doubt very much if any one of them had had the courage to face, more than fleetingly, even within the secrecy of his own heart. The fear that the man whom they had crucified would really come alive as he had promised. That the body that now lay dead in a tomb, disfigured by the mutilations of the cross, that this body, or some new and terrible version of it, would start to breathe again, stand up in its grave clothes, and move toward them with unspeakable power. To the extent that deep within themselves the Jewish elders fear this is a real possibility. Their being told by Pilate to make things as secure as they could was to have the very earth pulled out from under them. How does an old man keep the sun from rising? How do soldiers secure the world against miracles? Yet maybe it's not as hard as they feared. I suspect that many of us could have greatly reassured them. I suspect that many of us could tell them that all in all, there is a lot one can do in defense against miracles. And unless I badly miss my guess, there are thousands upon thousands of ministers doing precisely that at any given instant, making it as secure as they can. That is, which is quite secure indeed. The technique of the chief priests and the Pharisees was to seal the tomb with a boulder, and then to post a troop of guards to keep watch over it. But even for its time, that was crude. The point was not to prevent the thing from happening, like trying to stop the wind with a machine gun, but every time it happens, somehow to explain it away, to deflect it, diffuse it, in one way or another to dispose of it. And there are at least as many ways of doing this as there are sermons preached on Easter Sunday. We can say that the story of the resurrection means simply that the teachings of Jesus are immortal, like the plays of Shakespeare or the music of Beethoven, and that their wisdom and truth will live on forever. Or we can say that the resurrection means that the Spirit of Jesus is undying, that he himself lives on among us, the way Socrates does, for instance, in the good that he left behind him, in the lives of all who follow his great example. Or we can say that the language in which the Gospels describe the resurrection of Jesus is the language of poetry. But there is no poetry about it. Instead, it is simply proclaimed as a fact. Christ is risen. In fact, the very essence of the New Testament itself proclaims it. Unless something very real indeed took place on that strange, confused morning, there would be no testament, no church, no Christianity. Unlike the chief priests and the Pharisees, who tried with soldiers and a great stone to make themselves as secure as they could against the terrible possibility of Christ really rising again from the dead, we are considerably more subtle. We tend in our age to say, of course it's bound to happen, nothing could stop it. But when we are pressed to say what it was that actually did happen, what we are apt to come out with is something pretty meager. This miracle of truth that never dies. The miracle of life so beautiful that 2,000 years have left the memory of it undimmed. The miracle of doubt turning into faith, fear into hope. If I thought that when you strip it right down to the bone, this whole religion business is really just an affirmation of human spirit, an affirmation of moral values, an affirmation of Jesus of Nazareth as the great exemplar of all time and no more, then like Pilate, I would wash my hands of it. The human spirit just does not impress me that much, I'm afraid. And I have never been able to get very excited one way or the other about moral values. And when I have the feeling that someone is trying to set me a good example, I start edging to the door. So what do I believe actually happened that morning on the third day after he died? I can tell you this, that what I believe happened and what in faith and with great joy I proclaim is that he somehow got up with life in him again and the glory upon him. And I speak very plainly here, very unfancifully, he got up. He said, don't be afraid. Rich man, poor man, child, sick man, dying man who cannot believe, scared sick man, lost one. Young man with your life ahead of you, don't be afraid. He said, feed my sheep, which is why, like the chief priests and Pharisees, we try to make that tomb as secure as we can, because this is what he always says, feed my sheep, my lambs. And this is what we would make ourselves secure from, knowing the terrible needs of the lambs and our abundance, knowing our own terrible needs. He said, lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Anxiety and fear are what we know best in this fantastic century of ours. Wars, rumors of wars, from civilization itself to what seems like the most unalterable values of the past. Everything is threatened or already in ruins. We have heard so much tragic news that when the news is good, we cannot hear it. The proclamation of Easter Day is that all is well. And as a Christian, I say this not with an easy optimism of one who has never known a time when all is not well, but as one who has faced the cross in all its obscenity as well as all its glory, who has known one way or another what it's like to live separated from God. In this end, his will, not ours, is done. Love is the victor. Death is not the end. The end is life. His life, our lives through him, in him. As existence has greater depths of beauty, mystery, and benediction than the wildest visionary has ever dared to dream. Christ our Lord has risen. And that's the ending for today.
Thank you for that very uplifting reading from, you said what, Fred Buechner? Was that it? Fred Buechner?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Lovely. Anybody want to share
Okay.
anything before we close?
Love
Bill?
never fails.
Love never fails, right? I'm sorry, Sandy, you have to unmute because you need to unmute, Sandy. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yes, you're right. Love never fails. That was beautiful, Lori. Thank you.
Tina, you want to say anything before we say goodbye to Lori? No? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, well, thank you, Lori, and you have a beautiful day, and you all
Have a
be
great day.
well and blessed, and we'll see you all again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.